Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest stories, their context, their relevance and impact. I'm Govindraj Ethiraj. We've got two big stories this week. The first one, it's been a year of ups and downs, hits and misses for the Narendra Modi-led NDA government. The big question we're asking is not 1 year that was passed, but what's the next year challenge for the Modi government? The next question that we are asking today is looking at the government's social security schemes, particularly coming on the heels of some of the savings that we've seen thanks to the direct benefit transfer linked LPG scheme. Well, it's been ups and downs and plenty of hits and misses for the Narendra Modi-led NDA government that completed 1 year of office this week. A big focus has been the performance of the economy, industry and stock markets. The stock markets, of course, have been doing very well overall, though the dream run shows signs of slowing. It's been a mixed bag for industry and corporates overall, with corporates now being accused of being too close to the government and the government being too close to them. Before we begin our discussion, here's a report.
News of GDP growing at 7.5% in the last quarter of 2014-15 could not have come at a better time for the now one-year-old Narendra Modi government. With this, India becomes the fastest growing economy, surpassing China, something for Finance Minister Jaitley to flag and revel in.
It's absolutely clear that the economy is in a recovery mode. I say that because the services sector has significantly improved. It's doing well. What seems to be a silver lining is that the manufacturing sector is now growing.
It's been a gradual pickup since October 2014. In the third quarter of 2014-15, the economy had grown at 6.6%. It grew at 7.5% in the fourth quarter. Overall GDP growth rate in 2014-15 was 7.3%, 40 basis points higher than 2013-14 when it was 6.9%. The growth is attributed to improvement in services and manufacturing sectors.
There is a huge scope with all the steps that the government has taken and will take in the course of the year. Our potential to grow into a higher league is certainly there.
Indian markets have also done largely well in 2015. The benchmark BSE Sensex gave a return of 13%, topping the 30,000 mark in March this year. But tax area demands raised by the Income Tax Department on foreign portfolio investors and concerns over delay in key reforms like GST led to withdrawal of capital from Indian markets. Overall, though, industry and the markets remain cautiously optimistic about India's growth story. Krishnanand Tripathi's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me now are Ramesh Chandak, Director KEC International and former Managing Director of the company. Also with me are Ramakrishnan, Group CEO at Polycab. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. So the big question we're asking is, what's the next year for Modi like? So let's begin with you, Mr. Chandak.
I think the
key economic and industry challenges.
I think the first thing is that we should not waste next year in proving that he's pro-poor.
Okay.
What happened that now with a lot of perception created,
right?
What we are seeing last 1 month, that is really using a lot of his time on proving that he's pro-poor. I think his own agenda, original agenda of really making economic power, being really improving our defense capabilities, building infrastructure, he should really focus on that. And the best thing is that the first which he should address and which is going to address is the GST.
Okay. So we'll come to that. So when you said that he should not show that he's pro-poor, you seem to suggest that this might actually mean anti-industry.
But what will happen that to prove that he's pro-poor, see, and to really service that particular voting lobby, probably he will waste time. Not that he internally still wants to have economic growth, but that probably he may waste time.
So what's your biggest concern there? What could happen that could actually be anti-industry or work against the interests of the economy?
Right now what he's talking about, land acquisition bill, GST, infrastructure investments, clearing project faster, that may take a little setback. That should not happen.
Okay.
The allocation of fund, whatever is required, should be happening there.
Okay. So that's your key concern. Ram, are you in consonance with that?
Well, I don't think there is a contradiction in terms. At the end of the day, the goal of economic progress is to do good for society. And doing good for society in our context is upliftment,
right,
of the people, economic standards, good education, good health.
Right. But we are asking in the context of going from year 1 to year 2 and the unfinished agenda.
Very clearly for me, I think a beautiful roadmap has been created. It's like a strategic plan. The strategic plan, the details, the headings are all wonderful. I think the key lies in execution. I think in the last 1 year, if one looks at it, too much time has been laid on agenda creation. But I don't think enough time has been laid in terms of agenda execution. Some good stuff has happened.
Right. So
But I
that's the
think
last year. So
execution is critical.
Fair enough. So I'm saying if you were to look at the next
what
year
I
now,
would like to see happening, I would like a firm commitment to GST and absolutely no deferment of GST.
Okay.
I would really like to see the land acquisition bill, despite all populist opposition. I would like to see it happening. And to me, at the same time, I'm a little concerned about the fact that power sector reforms haven't really happened. To me, let us say privatization of distribution, taking care of state electricity boards, so that infrastructure can be given a fillip with adequate power.
Okay.
I think that's my priority.
Right. So, Mr. Chandak, would GST be the key concern or the manifestation of what the government could be getting right, assuming things go equally well in the second
I
year?
won't say that only one thing is very important. I think particularly GST is important. Creating a faster infrastructure is equally important. I think the skill development is going nowhere, because even that national skill development really has not done what it's supposed to do. I think a lot of focus has to be there, because at least if there are no people, that economic development will not come. Secondly, also I think politically, I think Shiv Sena and Akali Dal has to be on their side. I think they have not been able to manage these two allies with them. So forget about the other allies. I think that's another one. Maybe I think something they have to do in terms of university education that is more useful to the industry or to the people.
Right.
And I think these are the 4 or 5 things, if they address properly, probably will be on the right agenda.
Right. So let me ask the question a little differently. So if you look at the health of Indian industry today, I mean, there are a lot of issues, right? So there are infrastructure companies are stretched, bottom lines are under pressure, debt on the debt side things are looking weak, capacity is low, and demand is also weak. Given all of this, I mean, one is of course what can the government really do, if at all it can do anything. Second, what does industry need to do in the next 1 year too?
I think first thing is that these are all self-inflicted injuries. I think they are over-leveraged. Every company knows that they are getting over-leveraged, but they have gone ahead and leveraged themselves. We cannot blame government for that. I think they will have to do themselves. I think second problem, biggest problem is that there are a lot of NPAs in the bank, and these are the very companies where the NPAs are happening.
Right.
I think again we have to really ensure that first the banks are sound. And then actually some of the companies, suppose these people are not able to do, something else has to take over those assets and run the assets.
So the big question, for instance, now is, I mean, demand continues to fall. Companies are still sort of slowing down when it comes to growth. So how does that turn around? I mean, whatever the government does or does not do in the next 1 year.
We have to have some new people who are ready to invest money and take over the assets which really are not able to, they are not able to revive. That is the only way. The other option is that some of the hurdles for government to put the infrastructure, what a road is doing probably, that they are selling the existing roads and then really creating assets and building that. That model can be duplicated even in the power sector, can be duplicated in other sector, where government gets the money and then really other people come and execute that. At least the unfinished project should be completed.
Ram, what level of capacity utilization are your plants running right now?
In our case, we are right now running at about almost 80% of capacity utilization. And to be frank with you, we have spent about 500 crores on capex in the last 3 years, and we're going to spend about 1500 crores in the next 3 years. So we are significantly ramping up our capacity, and we are absolutely bullish about the way forward.
Though you're still catching up on what you've invested in the past, but that you've, I guess, accounted for.
That is planned for, because I mean, we really can't be hand to mouth in terms of capacity utilization. But just to take the point forward, I think there are 3 important things: the road grid, the gas grid, and I think there is a need for a water grid, about which nothing much is being talked about. If I really look at it, I think I am a little concerned about what's happening in the real estate sector. India is a consumption-led economy. The real estate sector very often acts as a spur to a lot of demand all around. And I think real estate sector is woeful at this point in time. Infrastructure sector, I mean, I think what he has spoken about, the stressed assets, I think there is a need to recapitalize the public sector banks. There is a need, probably we need to look at what China did in terms of looking at some of the toxic assets and seeing whether you can really park it aside so the regular business can happen. And I think we need to do something in terms of incentivizing people to own a second dwelling unit, a third dwelling unit or whatever, so that there is more demand that comes in.
Right, but I think there are so many people without housing, right? Wouldn't you want to be looking at them in the
what
first
I mean
place?
by that, for example, look at this entire aspect of slum redevelopment. How is it going to happen? How are you going to give in your 100 so-called, those smart cities, how are you going to ensure that the poor get better accommodation? And at the same, it's only when people invest.
Fair enough. So real estate as a larger issue. Mr. Chandak, let me come back to you. As if we want to prioritize, we've talked about GST, we've talked about addressing stressed assets, and also the problem of self-inflicted injuries, which is corporates. So, but one of the key problems still continues to be, and I'll come to jobs still because that's a big one, is demand. Right, so demand is just not picking up. Though we've had a low inflation environment, technically more buying power in the hands of consumers, we're not seeing a pickup. What could change that?
You see, the moment you build lot of infrastructure, as it is, lot of money will flow in the market, demand will get created, income will go up. Ultimately, that all money goes to the people. I think we have to see what is in the hands of the government, something which is not in the hand of the government. Infrastructure is purely in the hands of the government. They can really start investing money either in port, waterways, power, telecom, railway. The moment that really goes up, then actually the money
and you're saying that there is still scope for considerable more announcement in the coming year. Since we are talking about the next year,
it has to happen. It has to happen.
Okay.
If that doesn't happen, then really there is a problem. I think infrastructure is the basic need that will really help to reduce the cost of the industry. It will improve automatically the industry, and rest of the sectors will take place. Because ultimately, government cannot dole out money to the people to really increase the
right. So, if I were to ask you to map it out, so there is finance, which is, let's say, which provides the juice so that everything runs, or the fuel. There is the banking sector, which in turn sort of intermediates the funding. There are the entrepreneurs and the people who create the jobs in industry. So, how is all this adding up? I'm saying, if I were to look at the next 1 year, where does which piece fits how, and where does the government take it?
Basically, what we have seen that the moment the GDP goes up, the job creation happens. That is the general formula. If the GDP can go up to say 8-9%, definitely the job will get created.
Okay.
We have to see that how the GDP can get created. GDP can get created by investment, which is in the government hands, making the industry. The interest cost has to come down because interest cost is high. Interest cost comes down, so the industries really start picking up. To ensure that the banks are also liberal in giving to the, and as he very rightly said, that put the toxic assets on one side and really take it forward. And they will have to make some adjustments.
Right.
And really kickstart the industrial manufacturing.
Right. So you talked about skills, and I'm connecting to jobs in a moment, but you talked about skills and the fact that the Skills Development Corporation has not much to show so far. But it's also because perhaps that the demand is yet to pick up for the reasons that you just pointed out.
No, but at least the development of skill today, even today, most of the companies feel that the people which we get from college, we have to again train them for 6 months before they really become really useful. I think that has to happen in the colleges or the institutions. That happens all over the world. That happens in Germany, that happens in USA. It's not happening in India. Something is everybody wants to do BA, BCom, BE, something like that. And then when they come out, they are not able to, they are not capable of doing many things.
Right. Okay. So a more perfect fitment of skills to industry's needs is one of the things that should be on a agenda for the next year, right? Ram, what else is left quickly?
Govind, very simple, if you have to create 1 crore jobs per annum, it's not going to get done easily only through higher education. It has to happen through vocational training. It has to happen through significant skilling. And look at it, a kid in a small village gets the same kind of education, maybe in the vernacular medium, as compared to, let us say, our kids. The point of the matter is the needs are different. How do you make that kid employable? How do you make that rural kid become a rural entrepreneur? Where is the emphasis on all of this?
Okay.
I would like to see that happening.
Right, but the other point is that would industries like yours, or for that Mr. Chandak, be actually expanding in terms of employment generation? Aren't you becoming more productive with sort of advanced manufacturing and so on?
But just look at it. If I am trebling my capex over the next 2 years, 3 years, trebling, obviously, no matter what automation and mechanization we are doing,
you'll be doing
a huge number of jobs. Now, look at it downstream. A higher capacity means far more retailers, far more electricians, far more electrical contractors that are going to prop up. See, our job is to do business well, do it profitably, and create stakeholder value. And I think as a company, we would do everything possible to promote skilling. And we are happy to partner with anybody to do that.
Okay. Mr. Chandak, jobs?
See, again
this is one of those things which looks like it's going to come back and bite.
Very important. Probably that is one of the most important job for the country, for all of us, not only for the government. But I think I still repeat that if our GDP growth is higher, jobs will automatically get created. I think that's a universal truth we have tried and tested. Instead of saying that job will get 100 jobs here and 10,000 jobs there, as long as we can push the GDP growth by whatever means it is possible, whether by putting infrastructure, putting manufacturing in India, reducing interest cost, whatever we have to do. I think that is important.
Right. So, and you mentioned
also
manufacturing.
For that, what is important that we should get the FDI, because ultimately funding is required.
Right.
India doesn't have enough funds. So I think that our rating has to go up, as a country's rating has to go up. Again, the issues like that should not happen. Again, see, there is some sort of negativity created doing that amendment, but really raising those demands.
Tax terrorism is the word.
So anything that should not, negative publicity should not be there. I think it's a small amount, but since the negative publicity is
so
quite
focus
large.
on managing the image and the communication for the next year. Thank you both for joining us. We need to take a break. On the other side, we talk about some of the government social security schemes and the successes they would possibly have. Stay with us. Welcome back to Policy Watch. The government has succeeded in weeding out almost 40 million bogus LPG connections. There's more. It also wants to improve, now with more money in its hand, the outreach of social security programs, including to almost 80 million families already of the 250 million families for both accident insurance and life insurance. What are the challenges ahead? Let's see this report.
After successfully rolling out direct transfer of benefits to domestic gas consumers, the government is trying to replicate this accomplishment in some other areas too. In the last year, public sector oil marketing companies have detected and eliminated nearly 4 crore bogus LPG connections. The linking of LPG connections with bank accounts and their Aadhaar numbers has left no scope for bogus connections. After LPG, the government has initiated talks with state governments to repeat the same model for kerosene subsidy. Public sector oil firms incurred under-recoveries of nearly 25,000 crore rupees this year, 5,000 crore less than last year's figure. Kerosene is dubbed the poor man's fuel, as it is widely used in the hinterland. Petroleum companies incur a loss of 16 rupees per litre on the sale of kerosene. However, a big part of this highly subsidized kerosene is diverted to adulterate diesel due to a difference in cost of over 37 rupees a litre. In Delhi, oil firms supply subsidized kerosene at 15 rupees a litre, while the retail price of diesel is 52 rupees a litre. But replicating the DBT scheme with kerosene won't be easy. Unlike LPG cylinders, kerosene is distributed through a gigantic network of fair price shops administered by state governments. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me now are Sunil Bhandare, Advisor Economic and Government Policy at Tata Strategic Management Group, and Radha Vishwanathan, Senior Fellow at Observer Research Foundation. Thank you both for joining us. Mr. Bhandare, let me begin with you. So, with the direct benefits transfer, we've demonstrated a certain degree of efficiency in targeting, right? And that's one of the biggest failings, or has been one of the biggest failings in our ability to do better social security outreach for this country. Right. What's the next step, right? We're also talking about now accident insurance, health insurance. Are we now in a position to really bring about better and more efficient targeting of subsidies and benefits for the larger and particularly the poorer population of India?
I believe so, because I think a lot of things are happening, and over the course of the last many years, this direct benefit transfer was being talked about, and now the efforts are being made to strategize it. Now this needs to be given some kind of a content and substance, and that content and substance is taking place through what has happened over the course of the last year or so. The fact that the subsidies with respect to LPG is getting transferred, the fact that many other states are taking proactive action to transfer the benefits of PDS and education benefits or so on. So these is creating some kind of a platform, and that platform is necessary for the economy, also to bring about a wider degree of financial inclusion. Okay. And in this wider degree of financial inclusion, Jan Dhan Yojana happens to be one of the pillar of this entire process. And this Jan Dhan Yojana, together with what are the 3 major schemes which have been announced in the course of the last 3 weeks or so, I think those are going to make a tremendous amount of difference from the point of view, one, of creating some kind of an entitlement and empowerment of the people who have been deprived so far.
Okay, and we're going to talk about the challenges of doing that as well. So, Radha, your first thoughts?
I think.
I mean, do you see this linkage happening as smoothly as we are talking about it here?
And I think the government is going about it in a very logical step. Having first introduced the move for financial inclusion through the Jan Dhan Yojana, and then gradually introducing various products into the market that also mops up savings, offers people their own chance at contributing to their social security.
Yeah,
so I
their
see
sort of
that
future
we're moving
security,
towards
yeah.
a more self-reliant kind of system, which is so different from the rights-based approach and the dole-based approach that we were following till now. So
Okay.
I think in that sense it's a very
So that's a very important point, right? So moving towards a more self-reliant economy,
Yes.
empower people, and people
Yes.
feel empowered as well, and
Absolutely.
perhaps they will do better. You agree with that?
So yeah, I agree completely. In fact, the fact that it is a participatory in nature, because I think in the case of, for example, Atal Pension Yojana, there is a contribution which is expected to be there. In the case of the other two schemes, which is with
Accident,
respect
yeah.
to the accidental benefit and the life insurance, there is a contribution. So there is no freebies. So therefore, there is a participation, and that participation is affordable.
Right.
Affordable, convenient. Convenient in the sense that I think you have the facility of doing it through the bank account.
Right.
And there is a debit advice which can be given to the banks. So on the one side, you will see a lot of transfers coming to the Jan Dhan Yojana. From that Jan Dhan Yojana, many people would activize it and use it for the payments of this nature.
Right.
And if in a family, if you have two members who are working, and which is possible, even in the case of rural areas, then you will have a substantial amount of disposable income, out of which some discretionary part will be there for this particular purpose.
Right. So I think that goes to a point we were just talking about earlier, right? The whole digital India sort of
Yes.
driving all of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see a great convergence in all these schemes, because you see the recently introduced pension schemes and all of that are only open to those who have a bank account. So, you know, and this, when we combine this idea of financial inclusion with digital India, we are moving towards more and more of a system where some experts have called it a cash light economy, where more and more transactions are done through the e-mode, the electronic mode.
Rather than physical,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then you can have mobile phones which empower people to make these transactions and so on.
Right. So all the
it's
sort of
part
stars
a-
are lining up
yes,
in some ways
yes,
to ensure
yes.
this sort of
If they
smooth
line
flow.
up, then it
Okay,
will
if they
ensure
line
a
up.
smooth
Okay, so then let's talk about the if. What are the challenges ahead?
I think the challenges could be many. One is, of course, I think in the case of, for example, Jan Dhan Yojana, there is a huge cost involved for the banking system. And I think it was being mentioned that something like 140 rupees per bank account. And that's a kind of a cost which who is going to bear that cost. That's one important point. The second important point is that there will be quite a number of accounts which will be
Dormant.
zero,
Yeah,
zero,
okay, yeah.
zero
Or
balance
money will
account.
come in but immediately leave
It
because
will go, it will leave. The third challenge is, I think one has to see, for example, in the case of insurance, how the delivery system will take place, because I think that everything is going to be administered by Life Insurance Corporation of India. And when the dimensions are going to be huge, I think you are talking about millions of people taking these policies, and these policies have then to
hundreds of millions. I mean, yeah, with 80 million families already covered.
correct.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's the kind of a thing, because how does the benefit really will reach out to the concerned people?
So, but is that a function of technology or is it a function of people, administration,
I
HR?
don't think it is so much of a technology issue. It is probably with respect to the administration of the scheme.
Okay.
So down the line, the mindset of the people who are handling this kind of accounts, and how the administrative system or organizational structure of these
Okay, right. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. Yes, Radha? Yeah.
Here, as you rightly mentioned, you know, under the direct benefit transfer, we only have the PAHEL now, the LPG
Yeah.
cash transfer
Yeah,
that's taking
and that's
place.
administered by public sector,
Yes. So it's
company,
also
yeah.
a question of how quickly the government is able to transfer these promises into real benefits for the people. Because only when they see the benefits on ground will more and more people come forward for the subscribe to the Jan Dhan Yojana, because as of now we have 11.5 crores.
So in the case of LPG, are you suggesting that people may not have really experienced any benefits?
No, some have.
Okay.
Some definitely have. But how quickly the government...
Because, I mean, the government has surely benefited up to the extent of 5,000 crores linked to almost 21 million fake accounts. Right? So the government has clearly benefited. But it's not clear, I mean, if I am a beneficiary of I mean, if I hold an LPG account or if I take a cooking gas cylinder, it's not clear what my benefit is, except that I'm getting cash.
It's taking time, is what I've been told. So how quickly the government translates its promise of direct benefit transfer into action and the cash comes into these accounts will also depend on how people move towards, because after all this is a work in progress.
Right.
We want more people to subscribe to the Jan Dhan Yojana and then to have a universal coverage.
Right. And also going back to the efficiency question, I mean, is the fact that the government has saved more money also means more money into the systems?
Definitely.
To distribute more efficiently, hopefully at least.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, because I think because that was very clearly being mentioned by the Prime Minister himself, that if I am saving something in terms of subsidies not being paid, then that will be made available to others who are not covered by the system.
Right. So
that is another thing. The point which I also wanted to emphasize is that there is an issue about creating greater degree of awareness and education of the beneficiaries, because there is sometimes a perception that that the full benefit of the scheme is not accruing to them. And that is the area which probably requires to be looked at more carefully in terms of creating proper education.
Can you give us an example?
No, because I think, for example, I think when there was some increase or the amount which was expected to be transferred on the in the accounts of the beneficiary, the exact amount has not been transferred. There has been some reduction. That's what somebody complained to me, saying that look, I was getting this kind of LPG cylinder at this price.
But the balance that I'm getting is less from the government.
Much less.
Right. So you're saying that expectation management. So how do you manage the expectation then? I mean, is it go faster or basically go slow, communicate, build, and then?
I think mostly it should be through the communication.
Yeah, I think you should get your technology platforms correct and ensure that it is, as far as possible you avoid such errors, particularly at the start of the program, because it's very important to get the buy-in from the public.
Right, and that's a very critical question, and let me ask that question in a slightly different way, right? We've all been used to a way of doing things or not doing things, or let's say opening fake accounts and trying to get some LPG cylinder or some other benefit or subsidy and so on. It's also a massive cultural change in the way we even treat what is due to us or not due to us from the government, who is sort of the my-bap of everything. How is that going to change? I mean, it is changing because maybe there is some sort of force in administration, but there's still a long way to go.
No, actually, yeah, I think it is a starting point in any case, because I think people have to get used to this kind of a system.
No, and so my question is, could it fail therefore, if there is not enough more?
It will not fail, because I think a lot of work has gone behind the scene, and the fact that I think many people are now getting used to this thought process, that there is an Aadhaar system on the one side, there is this kind of a Jan Dhan Yojana, wherein my account is seen to be there. I am getting an identity for my account. So all these will build up a confidence.
So combination of individual identity, financial identity, sense of empowerment should take us somewhere.
Absolutely.
And is in that sense an irreversible process. Thank you very much, both Radha and Mr. Bhandari. We've run out of time on Policy Watch. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.